All right, I wanted to show you this because it was such an own. It made me feel so good. Finkelstein is back.
Let's play this clip of Norman Finkelstein on with Steve Malzberg on Russia Today's Rick Sanchez show. Not terribly interested in Steve Malzberg, to be honest with you.
Forgot about him.
Or Rick Sanchez. But Finkelstein is has written multiple books around Gaza and is quite familiar with the history and whatnot.
And if people want like some levity in the situation, just go look up Finkelstein's debate with Alan Dershowitz on Democracy Now, where he entirely humiliates him on this
Also,
topic.
the Eli Lake one at the Comedy Cellar was good.
Yes, I watched that. That was quite good as well. Eli Lake had really nothing to say. It was pretty sort of stunning. But nevertheless, Finkelstein is really helpful in terms of his debates if you find yourself in having these conversations. One of the things, and I talked about this the other day, but I think Finkelstein puts it more succinctly and contextualizes it better. The idea that we used to hear all the time, and certainly I heard this as a kid growing up, Jordan won't take in the Palestinians. Egypt won't take in the Palestinians. They're Arab countries all around Israel. Lebanon won't take in the Palestinians. Syria won't take it. Like, they're Arabs.
Take the Arabs.
The idea that because there's a shared ethnicity, that people are going to be just necessarily open to taking in hundreds of thousands of millions of refugees into their country is bizarre, but it was never considered bizarre in the context of Arab countries. But I mean, if you juxtapose it to white countries, to Europeans, things start getting a little bit muddled, and there is Finkelstein had a much better example than my hypotheticals in this conversation with Steve Malzberg. And it's important because you will hear this argument about why isn't Jordan taking these people who lived in Palestine,
putting aside the ethics of actually ethnically cleansing and pushing them out, by the way.
Right. But why aren't the Arab countries taking them? They don't want them. As if like, wait, what? Like,
it's so racist.
Who wants the South Dakotans?
But here it is.
I mean, first of all, all this give the land back. How many times have we heard over the course of many, many, many years? Give the land back to the Palestinians. Well, when Israel fought wars and took the Sinai and the Gaza, they took it from Egypt. When they took Jerusalem and they took the West Bank, they took it from Jordan. And when they took, of course, the Golan Heights, they took it from Syria. So when they say give it back to the Palestinians, they didn't have it when Israel took it in these wars. So I guess the Arab countries stole it from the Palestinians. That's number one.
Yeah.
Why does not one country in the entire Arab world not want to help their brothers and take them in, spread them out? You don't know one.
The entire reason why there is a Syria and a Jordan and an Egypt and a Lebanon and a Saudi Arabia is so that the Arab population would be divided, because the Western powers were worried about an Arab state, an Arab nation state, because that would be a world superpower. So they needed to divide them up into a bunch of different countries. They found populations that had local geographic pluralities, and that's Lebanon. Lebanon was created because that was a concentration of Christians. This was all a design to ensure that there is no Arab superstate. And that was implemented by European imperialism. What is Iraq? Ali Velshi just posted the full Neftali Bennett interview. Where? Pterosaurus Rex, thank you for the prime. I'm not trying to be a spoiled streamer, but I love when people post little, instructions for me to start looking. All right, chat, stopping the stream. I'm going to start doing research on the fly to find this interview. What the fuck do you expect me to do here? Okay, thank you.
Want him in Egypt? You don't want him in
Or at least
Jordan?
telling
You
me
don't
where
want him
to
in
look.
Syria? You don't want him in Saudi Arabia? There's a million countries. Spread it out. Nobody wants to help them. Why?
This is a difficult. I'll tell you what. Let's.
What the fuck? Nobody wants to help the Palestinians. Why? Maybe it's the two U.S. aircraft carrier battle groups. Maybe it's Israel's nuclear weapons that they got in violation of the International Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Hey, was Israel ever sanctioned for violating that treaty? India was. Pakistan was. Was Israel ever sanctioned? No? Why not?
Pause for a moment. Thank you.
I'll answer in one simple sentence.
Make your point. But we're going
Why did any of the European countries or the United States want Jews before the Nazi Holocaust? Maybe the Jews were like the Palestinians. They were so horrible. They were so vicious. They were so bestial, or as the current Israeli government calls them, human animals. Maybe that's why none of the European countries and the United States didn't want them. Do you think that's the reason?
This is not easy, but we're going to have to...
Curious.
Gentlemen...
You think that's the reason? You're smiling, but your stupid smirk won't change the fact that the very argument you used was used by Hitler.
Sir?
Yeah, the same argument you used was used by Hitler
because I'm a Jew,
to justify the
and you don't like
extermination of the
Jews, do
Jews.
you?
Gentlemen...
Your argument was used by Hitler to justify the extermination of the Jews. Nobody.
What's my argument? What's my argument?
Nobody
What's my
wants them
argument?
because they're so terrible and so horrible. You're a Nazi speaking now in those kinds of arguments.
The funny, this has become...
I mean, that's true. I mean, that's just basic analysis. That's exactly what the Nazis said. Oh, nobody wants the Jew. The Nazis would go out and say, who wants the Jews? Nobody wants the Jews. We're handling it. That's exactly what they said. And to see Israelis repeating those same arguments to bomb children, defenseless children. Hamas is not a military. The Palestinian people do not have a military to defend themselves.
Become very contentious. We're going to take a break. I want to thank you both.
Not on my part.
I want to thank Dr. Norman Finkelstein, as well as Steve Malzberg, for this very powerful.
It's interesting to watch Malzberg go, you don't like Jews. I mean, Finkelstein, born of parents who basically escaped the Holocaust.
So maybe he's also self-hating.
That's the only response.
Yeah.
But I mean, the idea is the idea that there is something wrong. That's what Malzberg said, right? What is it about the Palestinians that they're...
I mean, this is, and I'm going to just show you what I mean. This is basic history. And that's why we say it's a genocide. That's why we call it a genocide, what they're doing in Gaza, because this is the argument they're using. Nobody wants the Palestinians. The Egyptians don't want them. When Jewish refugees was a problem no one wanted to solve. That is the situation we have here. That's not an argument to allow for bombing children. Finkelstein grew up with zero extended family due to the Holocaust. Both of his parents had lost all their family members to the genocide. People questioning his personal relationship to this are insane. Okay, we're not watching the gooning clip. We're not watching the gooning clip, okay? Inappropriate joke.
Brothers in the Arab countries won't take them in.
Makes you wonder.
As if, like, you know, like, I don't know. Well, the idea that you're going to have, I mean, you know, let's say displaced Ukrainians, and you're going to have hundreds of millions of Ukrainians go into countries that don't necessarily have the ability to absorb them. Like, they're all white. Why wouldn't they be absorbed? And the idea that once England cut up these territories and decided we're going to put the lines here and we're going to put the lines here, that therefore the people literally living on the land, whatever you want to call it, I mean, it was called Palestine by the Brits. It wasn't a country. It was an area that they called, you know, whatever, a village. You want to call it like I mean, the villages had names, but the idea that there was a chartered nation there, no. But it was a region referred to as Palestine. And there were people living there, specifically there. And the idea that when Britain cut it up, that the lines fell somewhere, and therefore, you know, this land was taken from the Jordanians. The people living on the land were dispossessed.
Yeah.
These are the same arguments you will hear about Native Americans.
I was just about to say that. Because
what do you mean Choctaw land? There was no what country is Choctaw? Never heard of that.
Right, but like what the guest there was essentially saying too is like, well, I mean, let's extend. Say we're using the argument that Jews were in Palestine 2,000 years ago, and so they have the right to displace the Palestinians from this land, right? You could apply that argument to the Native Americans in this country. You absolutely could if you wanted to, that they were here much before the United States, right? I know these are very different situations, and in like crude analysis, obviously, indigenous Americans are closer to Palestinians in this way. But the point is just like they're expelling anybody from land is monstrous, and there has to be a way to find reconciliation so everybody is able to live and not in the apartheid system where people in Gaza, 90% of them don't have clean water, and it's one of the poorest places on the planet. So like debating over who has the right to the land in this way, the point is that there's one group that's being subjugated and does not have any of the rights that we're talking about here.
It's harder today than ever to know what information to trust. Ground News is one of the first places I check when I am prepping for this show on a daily basis.
I need to get myself a Ground News sponsorship. They're just handing out the money. True.
I used to support a two-state solution, but Israel has killed the two-state solution with the settlements. It's a struggle now between right-wing ethno-nationalism and liberal ethno-nationalism, and I don't approve of either. An essential element of democracy is equal rights. Today I support one democratic state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, with equal rights for all its citizens, regardless of religion and ethnicity. The experience that my family and I had of living together, coexisting with Arabs, give me reason for hope that what happened once in the Middle East can happen again. I used to support a two-state solution.
Oh no, you said from the river to the sea, freedom. That means you're anti-Semitic.